there's certainly very, very deep changes happening in the world. Some people say these are the birth pangs of emergence of a multilateral order. But these are also causing shock waves which are shaking the foundations of some of the most strong and traditional relationships. And I think if you talk of the Western world, the strongest relationship that the US has had and the strongest partner it has had in the world has been EU or Europe as a whole. Israel, of course, is a very, very strong partner, but more in the Middle East. So this is a relationship that dates back to before World War II, and since the establishment of the current world order, which is of course now crumbling, this relationship has withstood the challenges that were put to it in the last 70 years, 80 years since the World War. But now you see that there are cracks that are very visible in this relationship, and there are very solid reasons for these cracks appearing. Historically, if you look after the centuries or the golden period, what you call of the European continent, when they were colonizing the world, when they became the world powers, we saw their decline, and we saw the rise of what you call the American superpower today. And with the decline and with decolonization and everything, with the decline of Europe and the rise of the Americans, a different kind of relationship was established between the EU or Europe and of course the US, where US, because of its economic and military strength, became the net security provider for all of Europe. And I am talking of the emergence of NATO against the Warsaw Pact, which was, of course, the then Soviet Union and the Eastern European countries. And if you recall that period, by becoming the net security provider, what did the Europeans do? They basically made their foreign policy and defense policy hostage to the interests of the US, because they created NATO, they created joint forces, but you see throughout these last 80 years that all the wars that have happened in the world have been led by the Americans, where the Europeans were made to pay the bulk of the money that was spent on these wars, very, very destructive wars that have destroyed half the world now. And that has also weakened EU to the core, both financially and in terms of the societal changes that have taken place in their country, because and the rise of Far East, the rise of Islamophobia, the rise of hatred is actually eroding the European culture and the European societies as a plague, because for so many decades now, the Europeans have been funding the dreams and the ambitions and the wars of the Americans. You would recall that General de Gaulle had actually taken France out of NATO. And what he said is so true. When taking France out of NATO, he said a country loses its sovereignty, when it loses its power over its armed forces, when your generals are reporting to a general of an organization, then your defense is completely compromised. And if your foreign policy is also then sort of doled out to an organization, then what is left in a country? Because your defense is in the hands of a supranational organization, and your foreign policy, and you cannot sort of separate foreign policy from your strategic policy or from your defense policy. So then you become puppets, and we've seen how EU has become puppets. And who has suffered in all these years? The European economies have gone down. Today, the only country that really has what you call real economy is Germany left, as far as technology and as far as financial strengths are concerned. And all these wars have affected who? The Europeans, because Europe is connected by land to Eurasia, to Asia, to the Far East, to the rest of the world, and to the Middle East. And when wars have happened here, where have the refugees gone? They've gone to Europe. Very few go to America, because America is not a social welfare state and it's just too far. So the brunt of the wars, the negative fallout of all the wars, whether they were fought in Europe, whether they were fought in the Middle East, whether they were fought in South Asia or Southeast Asia, has all fallen on the EU. To the extent that now, after suffering so much, that they are beginning to speak out. They are beginning to rethink what this transatlantic relationship has actually given to Europe. It has actually led to the complete destruction of Europe, erosion of its economy, erosion of its society, erosion of its actual political and military strength in the rest of the world. Therefore, there is a very, very deep thing that these wars have been fought by the US only for its own national interest, and these countries were basically made puppets.